Well, hello everyone. It is Monday, January, not January, July. Oh, what's today? Third week in July. I don't know. And come back to you today, finish the fourth part and then the last part of the blog I've been sharing concerning a case for true education. All right, so this is, once again, coming from my basement. Apologize for the 80s panels, wall panels, and there'll be no editing or anything like that because I don't really have time. But if you find a way to, yeah, we're just going to jump right into it. So this is actually a very difficult one to share this evening because it really affected me personally and things that happened to me while I was in Maryland and basically almost becoming ideological casualty with some of the things that are happening on in education. So let's get right into it. So in January of 2018, as I was teaching Intro to Spanish to 7th graders, the student raised his hand. He says, "Mr. Rios, I'm teaching pronouns like I do like I've been doing the last 10 years there." And he said, "Mr. Rios, what about if a person identifies as transgender? Which Spanish pronoun do we use?" So I responded that the right way, that the Spanish language does not change, that we use él for biological male and ella for biological female. So as I was doing that, I made a passing comment about an article I was reading about this guy who was in his biological 50s, and this man wanted his European nation to have his birth certificate changed to reflect that he was 20 years younger, even though he wasn't. He was actually in his 50s. And so that passing comment was basically just say, hey, listen, that's actually pretty dangerous in a civil society to have these kind of things happening, and thought none of it. So, but little did I know that the correct explanation of Spanish pronouns would compel the school's administrators and district to push me out of that school to another. So, even though me knowing that sort of the current situation about what is what you say and how you say it and the whole, well, we'll talk about it a little more, but it's basically this: there's no room for dissent, and there's no room for really what's true in modern education. And just not. Because 2 days later, when I found out that a student was quote unquote offended by my comment, I don't know how, but nevertheless, I briefly debriefed with the 7th grade class, and I explained that my teaching was not disparaging to anyone, not even indirectly. It just stated something. So I also explained the issue in a great appropriate manner as much as my professional judgment would allow me to. But ultimately, and this is really important, ultimately I let them know that these matters that they were asking about, all right, were for parents, their own parents to speak to them about, not me. And even by me understanding the current culture of what's going on in government schools, even me being very, not being politically correct, but just using wisdom, I found out that even the right answer to the wrong question is the wrong answer. So looking back, I probably just would have said, this is how the language works, and any other questions, just ask your parents. That's where I should have left it at, and nothing else. So a couple days later, as I'm debriefing with them to exonerate myself of this false accusation, I found out that that was not enough. So debriefing with them, the students, some students went to the guidance counselor, and they were empowered by this guidance counselor who was supposed to be guiding them. And basically, they were encouraged to write incident reports and to let the other two administrators know of my so-called offense. These students were allowed to corroborate their story so that I would be seen in the worst light. So in other words, from my comments, it went from a comment to that was the wrong answer. Okay? Because the answer that they wanted me to say was, well, if a student identifies as if she is a biological female and she identifies as a male, you say él. And if she is a biological male, and I'm saying if he is a biological male and identifies as a female, then you say ella. That's what they wanted me to say. So the right answer to the wrong question was actually the wrong answer. So they took that because that's what they wanted. That's the direction they wanted to take it to. So they were allowed to corroborate the story so that I would have seen in the worst light. How do I know this? I read the incident reports, and they themselves conveyed the fact that students were recruited by the administration. Pay attention to this. They were recruited. In other words, they were saying, who do you think would answer like this? And one student wrote that they came looking for him, and they covered the name, so he could have been a male student or female, so I don't know. But that they were looking for these students so that they could actually trump up charges against me, these false accusations. But in a real investigation, what you do is that you separate witnesses and you gather the facts individually. I'm not even a private investigator, and I know that. And they should have known that. But this didn't happen because they had an agenda. They basically wanted me to lose my job. So in the end, the district imposed after all of this, I'm giving you a short version. There was a formal reprimand placed in my records from the school district. They couldn't fire me because they knew I didn't do anything wrong. So they only filed this formal reprimand because they were afraid of potential lawsuits from the LGBT community and the ACLU. And most districts in America at these government schools lack the leadership to stand for truth. So another reason, which I didn't write, is because they basically didn't want the truth. Actually, I did write it because people who hate the truth are willing to do anything and everything to suppress and get rid of the truth. So in addition, the principal pushed me out by not granting me my rightful tenure position. Now, I don't even believe in tenure position. If you're a good teacher and the school wants to keep you, great. If you're terrible and you're not willing to be remediated or just being able to become a better teacher, then they don't renew your contract. But going on the contract that I signed with this school district, there is tenure, and my tenure was not granted to me. So out of six Spanish world foreign language teachers, I was there the second longest, and yet I was told at the end of the year that because the school was going a different direction with the foreign language department, they were going to move me to another school. But I knew that was all a lie. I knew that they were not happy because I answered a question that was not to their agenda. That's basically what it came down to. So the administrators no longer wanted me there. And once again, many people hate the truth so much that they're willing to do everything they can to suppress or get rid of the truth. But truth has a way of smacking us in the face if we have an adverse attitude towards it. If we are adverse against the truth, it just has a way of smacking us in the face. Because we can suppress the truth, but we cannot get rid of the truth. So in the Gospel according to Matthew, in the 19th chapter, verses 4 through 6, it says, quote, "And Jesus answered and said to them, Have you not read that he made them at the beginning male and female, and said, For this reason a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall be one flesh. So then they are no longer two but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let not man separate," unquote. So it's very clear that God himself determines a person's sex, not the individual himself or herself. Biology is the second point. Biology confirms a person's sex. So I'm not trying to sound vulgar, but the actual Y chromosome in the male sperm will determine the baby's sex. That's basic biology. And ultimately, God determines if we're going to be born a male or female. So we have the theistic worldview, we have biology, and we have logic now. So logic further conveys the rationality of a person's sex. For example, no matter how hard we're going to try, men, No matter how hard we may try, we will never be able to get pregnant, give birth to a baby, breastfeed, and do everything that goes along with the blessing of motherhood. No matter, that's just basic logic. Let's take it a step further. Let's look at our constitutional rights, because nowadays you say constitutional authority, constitutional right, what's legal, you might as well be speaking Japanese. And you know what? If you're a citizen in this country, we have a responsibility to know what the law of the land says. Our United States Constitution is a 4,400 word document, and the Bill of Rights are not that long after it. And we need to read it, and we need to understand it very well, because a lot of this, what's happening, there's just a trampling on liberty, on individual liberty. And what's going to happen is that, and I'm going to say this a little later, that the people who agree with these bad ideas, they're going to come after your liberty too, because totalitarian governments, they want complete authority over every aspect of the citizen's life. That is what totalitarian governments want, and that's their aim. So anyway, here's the first part of the First Amendment. There's 5 clauses. Here's one of them. It says, quote, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, unquote. And this is really important. Most of the readers in this blog know that there are Americans losing their jobs and their livelihood because of coerced speech in America. I want you to really process that. Forced speech in America. That if a person's a biological male and you don't say it, and you have to go along with this lie, there is an attack on your life, liberty, or property. Forced speech in America. You can process that. So let me say it again so the reader can process. There's actually coerced speech in America. In other words, if you are a free-thinking individual in America and you strongly dissent with many popular philosophies because they propagate bad ideas and destructive lies, the sacredness of your liberty and your life and your liberty and your property are at stake. So it's worth mentioning a third time or fourth, however many times I mentioned. There's actually many people and groups in America who are forcing particular speech. And the last time I checked, coerced speech is a regularity in communist regimes. You get that? So in communist Romania, communist Cuba, well, when Romania was communist, communist China, Russia's Federation, but they still have a lot of communistic ideas. And so let me say it again. By the way, if you are an individual whose ideas are congruent with the lie of transgenderism, eventually they're going to be coming after your freedom of speech as well, just so you know. Unless you sell your soul to the devil. In other words, unless you become too afraid to call a lie and to call the truth. The county where this happened to me was in Maryland, and the district was at Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Now, I'm not going to mention names because that defeats the purpose of this whole vodcast here. But I did want to talk about a certain packet titled "Students." It's called, quote, "Students and Gender Identity Guidelines for Support," and this is it right here. So I didn't put it in the bibliography. There it is, right there. All right, Anne Arundel County Public Schools, Students, Gender Identity and Guidelines. Okay, I didn't put in the bibliography because actually I forgot, but here it is. I'm naming my source. So I'm going to be quoting right from here of things that are in here. And I got a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm not going to have time to actually talk about. Okay? All right, from literature and all these other things. All right, so first of all, when the school administration handed these to the teachers, we were told, I was there at that time, we were told these are not guidelines, this is policy. In other words, they were saying, you have no choice but to comply with this, which is a lie. This is a lie. They're basically saying you have to comply with this or else. That's what they were saying. And when that happened, I was like looking around because I felt like I was in a communist country, actually. I felt like I was in a communist country. So on part 2 of this, I'm going to go ahead and finish the different quotes from here and elaborate on them. All right, see you in a little bit.